History prefers legends to men. Soaring speeches to quiet deeds. History remembers the battle and forgets the blood. Whatever history remembers of me, if it remembers anything at all, it shall only be a fraction of the truth. For whatever else I am, a husband, a lawyer, a president, I shall always think of myself, first and foremost, as a hunter.
Man, Abraham Lincoln, he didn't free black people from slavery. He freed them from being lunch, from our dinner.
Goddamn right.
Our breakfast.
Well, think
right.
about it. If you're a vampire, you know that the dark meat is the best.
The blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice.
Yeah, if that phrase wasn't any truer, you know, no.
This is why this movie was made. I mean, I've always been upset whenever you hear about these fucking textbooks that all our schools have been getting, how the history is completely wrong, and I'm like, yes, I know, because am I the only one that fucking knew that Abraham Lincoln used to kill vampires with his fucking axe?
It's because now we have the Freedom of Information Act, so they can.
I mean, let's face it, it's hard to believe, really, that a white guy looked at all this free labor and went, we got to put a stop to that. but when he goes, oh, they're eating them? Oh, okay, now that is kind of
cool.
fucked up.
That's a dick move, man.
Maybe that's why he said it. He's like, damn, y'all eating up all the labor. I ain't gonna do it. I was kind of.
We're not charging him.
Yeah, no, I was kind of offended, but I was also kind of flattered in a way. Well, I was offended because this is a film where the vampires in this movie, I mean, it really is this thing where, we have this big struggle about black people trying to get their freedom, and Abraham Lincoln coming in and helping them out. And, this reduces it really to like, oh, black people are just food for vampires. But at the same time, I was also kind of flattered because they really love to eat black people in this. Well, we taste good, man.
If I was to give the movie some credit, it wasn't like Abraham Lincoln was like a slave owner himself. I mean, he was an abolitionist at heart.
Yes.
It's just that gave him a second motivation as well.
True.
Stopping the vampires.
Yeah, he grew up, he had his little black buddy with him the whole way. So before he even knew what vampires were, he was like, black people, they're okay.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't see the problem.
And they're delicious, apparently.
Abraham Lincoln was down.
Well, now, it wasn't so much that they were delicious more so than white people. It was just that you go around killing white people is going to be a problem.
Right.
Yeah. I know. In the movie, the vampires really had those black people under control, too. Like, no way white people really did it. I mean, they really had them under control because it was almost like, yeah, fuck a whip. You take a bite out of a nigga's ass. That'll get them to work. I'll bet you get your ass out there and pick a cotton now.
I don't know. Yeah. I think the whip was pretty effective on its own.
Yeah, it was. I'm just saying,
Nothing like whooping some ass. Come on. We've all done it.
But what was even bad was how it opened with a vampire slave owner. It's like, God damn, man. He's whipping people and biting them too.
Yeah, you think it much worse? Seriously, what else are they going to do to this guy? They're going to come in with a Darth Vader mask.
Yeah, just start choking black people.
Deep fry them, some real Southern cooking.
Right. Come over here, Negro, so I can eat you.
Yeah, they serving up buckets of black people.
That's right. The finger looking good.
Yeah, the Colonel's seven herbs and black asses. But you know what?
I think the Colonel was a vampire killer too.
Or a vampire, more likely.
Yeah, Kentucky Fried Negro is what it was before. But you know what? I will say, while I wasn't crazy about the entirety of the movie, this worked out better than I thought it ever would, because this movie, it does not crack a smile at all. They are taking this shit seriously.
That's what makes it work. I mean, they have this idea. It's not just absurd. It's silly. And throughout it, even the script itself, it's like, wow, there's a lot of shit here that's happening that's stupid. But they commit. They play it straight-faced, and you go like, God damn it. But then your universe that you've created here, this works. It's a lot of fun.
They know how stupid it is, totally. And I think the only way to sell the joke is by being completely earnest.
Yeah.
They know it's funny.
Yeah.
Like there's no question to me they considered the audience is going to see this and laugh at points. The only way that works is by always acting as if you're totally serious the whole time. And sure enough, that sells it.
Yeah, and that's what I appreciate. Not only do they sell it, but I'm like, wow, they're actually they're going out of the way to make sure that Abraham Lincoln seems like Abraham Lincoln. You know, even when they got the guy to play him, who is played by Liam Neeson,
Right.
Right when they got him, I mean, it's like, wow, you know, he does look, and he's playing the role seriously. He's not a joke. It's not like, okay, all he needs to do is fucking, you know, wear that top hat and run around with an axe, and fine, we might as well cast like Wesley Snipes or something, which they didn't do. They actually they took the time to actually choose a really good actor, I thought. And not only that, but just, you know, the atmosphere of the movie. They got it down to where, you know, you're seeing basically Washington being built. Right. And, you know, just I love how, even though, you know, it's still Washington, you see the White House, but they make it creepy to where they add a lot of atmosphere. I love the fog. When you see the White House and the fog where it's like on the Morse or something, you know, and that creepy fog, I was like, wow, they even got the look down of how they want to play this out.
Yeah, the biggest strength, I think, are the visuals here. And
which are incredible.
The context in which they're happening. I mean, like we were saying, like there's a point like early on in the film, well, any one of a couple different things. It's so ridiculously absurd that like either you're gonna go with it from there on, oh, this is how it's gonna be, or you're just gonna leave. You might as well. If you can't, like for me, it was him chopping down a tree in one, you know, you're like, okay, I don't care who you are. I don't care like where you came from, unless you're actually a superhuman being, you cannot do that.
Well, not
but
only
in
that,
this movie, you can do it if you're pissed enough.
Well, see, at that early point in the movie, because that happens so early in the movie, where Dominic Cooper, or is it Robert Downey Jr.? I keep losing track. Is teaching him, the first thing he teaches him how to chop down a tree in one blow, and it's all, if you get mad enough, you can do it. And with that, I was thinking like, this might not work for me.
So tell me, Mr. Lincoln, what do you hate?
I hate that my mother was taken away.
Inadequate.
I hate that we were afraid.
And?
That my mother and father, everyone that we knew, lived in fear.
Pathetic.
I hate that I was too small.
Too weak.
Yes.
And that you failed.
Yes!
To protect her.
Yes!
And that you let her die. Power, Lincoln, real power, comes not from hate, but from truth.
And I think it was because they were like rushing through the whole training part. Like they just montage. Even when it wasn't a montage, it felt like a montage. Like, let's just get through this. I'm like, no, I'm not feeling it. I don't think I'm going to be with it. But once they get that established, then it starts moving into the cooler shit part.
Well, we'll get into it in a little bit because
first you're going to tell us the plot.
Well, we pretty much just told you.
Abraham Lincoln kills some motherfucking vampires.
That's it, man.
Black people from being eaten.
Yeah. That is it.
The title says it all.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
If the very premise of this makes you say this is dumb and I hate it just by the premise alone, I doubt this movie is going to hold you through, because I already know. I talked to one person who came out, and they said this is ridiculous and I hate it. And I asked them. I said, well, have you ever read the book? And they said, no, because the book sounds stupid. And I said, okay.
Then why'd you even show up?
Yeah, you know, so you came to see the movie version and expected it to be any better for you. But I mean, I understand the people who wouldn't like it, but the people who, if you can accept it for Abraham Lincoln being an axe wielding vampire killer, hunter throughout the whole film, then I don't think that you're going to be deterred away from this, because it is a goofy premise. And the thing about this movie is that it really rides on who you get to play Abraham Lincoln. And the guy that got is Benjamin Walker. What has he been in before? Is he another British ass actor?
The life story of Liam Neeson?
Yeah, he was in Taken,
Star Wars,
Star Wars prequels, Batman Begins.
If they ever do a Taken where Liam Neeson has to go kick ass with his long lost son or something, they
Taken prequel.
That's all I thought. Yeah.
If they make Taken Babies or Taken Junior or something like that,
Taken 2.
If they make a movie where they show how he got those particular set of skills, this is the guy.
Taking the Wonder Years. Yeah.
They would have to call it Taking.
Yeah. or if you just want to do Liam Neeson's story where he's come, or if Liam Neeson just needs somebody to play him as a young man in a movie, this guy is it, because you're looking
wait,
at.
I don't understand. Are you saying this guy's like Liam Neeson?
I don't think you really understand. This guy, Cyrus, I don't think you hear me. You're not getting me. This guy looks like Liam Neeson.
Okay, hold on. Let me back up. For
Process.
I don't think you hear me. No, it is amazing because you can call him Benjamin Walker, but when you're looking at him, you're thinking, that's Liam Neeson.
All the time.
And so you already accept him being able to whoop a vampire's ass, you know?
Right.
I mean, Liam Neeson has beaten everybody, but you do think like, okay, he has not beaten a vampire that I know of, and they probably couldn't get him, so they got this guy to be in.
If they had replaced him with Liam Neeson and he had the Liam Neeson accent the whole time, I wouldn't have cared.
Yeah.
It's like people would be like, but that's Abraham Lincoln. Why would he have that accent? I'd just look at him like, shut up.
At this point, yeah, who cares? But you know what? I agree with you. See, this movie has a lot of great, for me, a lot of great strengths and a lot of great flaws to go along with it. And I think, and for me, the flaws become more obvious as the movie goes on than it does at the beginning of the movie.
Well, because it's like it's a gag, it's a gimmick, and it works for more than it doesn't. But there is a point after about the halfway point of the movie where you're like, okay, let's wrap this up, or at least try and do something really interesting. Because there's a really nice set piece about at the beginning of the second reel or so that you're like, wow, that was amazing. And then you're just waiting for them to do something as cool as that again. I mean, there's a lot of action all the way through, but still, it starts losing its appeal. And I think if it wasn't for the really spectacular big ending set piece, I would probably think less of this movie.
I might do. But there was that where I had that same fear, and I was like, all right, they know they got the gimmick, they got the Zack Snyder slow-mo speed up action going. Tim Burton directed it, so the third act is just going to fall apart.
Tim Burton
directed it. He produced it.
Timur
Yeah.
What's that guy's name?
Timur
It's Timur
Let me see. I won't try and say it. Timur Bekmambetov.
Yeah.
And he's known for directing. Well, people probably recognize him mostly from Wanted, the movie that came out a few years ago with Angelina Jolie. But what were the two movies?
Night Watch and Day
Watch.
Yeah, which were extremely visual movies.
Yeah, he has a very distinctive style that I would go so far as say Zack Snyder ripped off, not the other way around.
It could be,
but
the thing is, he doesn't lay it on as thick as Zack Snyder does. I mean, sure, a lot of the axe play does have that, and yet it just wasn't as annoying. It was almost like, you know what, this is cool. This is its style, and it works, and it's not getting on my nerves.
Well, it's weird because it's like he's using it not to like rotate around and show the little details. Oh, here's this drop frozen in the air, blood or whatever, this stylistic moment. It's more to show you how violent and bloody this combat really is and how cool the moves they're doing are.
Yeah.
And for that, I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm watching really intense superhuman combat where I can see them, every bit of them being superhuman and awesome in it.
But I have to admit, some of that really, I mean, I didn't know it was directed by this guy at all. Which when you mentioned Wanted, I was like, okay, a lot of the problems I had with Wanted, I kind of had it with this movie.
Same problems.
Just to where some of it felt uneven because you'd have like actually scenes, like decent scenes where the camera isn't going crazy. It's not too stylized in the very beginning, but when they get to one of the most, I thought was the most impressive action sequence I've seen in a while, where there's a stampede going and there's Abraham Lincoln duking it out with a vampire and the most surreal looking, like it was like they were on another world. Right. I mean, how surreal it was, but it worked. I mean, it was so intense, so visually striking, and just beautiful to look at. To where I was like, wow, I wish the whole movie kind of felt like this. Because if you're gonna do it, yeah, sure, do it all the way. But at the same time, I'm like, I think that's why maybe some of the scenes where you're actually seeing him being Lincoln, because you can't have like crazy as visual camera sweeps while Lincoln's like giving his speeches. That would just be ridiculous.
Well,
but it does leave the film a bit kind of disjointed in a way.
It feels like in that third act or maybe second half, like it's almost like a different film. Mm-hmm. But
Or done by a different director.
Right. But as you brought up, I appreciate the fact that it did go there. You got to see adult Lincoln, and they weren't afraid to play it into history and really go into it, not just kind of play around like, well, you know how this happened, don't hold us to it. Like, no, they actually committed to it. And it's a part that could lose people because they go like, listen, now you're messing with real history, and I don't appreciate that. Well, it's like, if you've been here this long, don't.
They want to make it fit into the real story of Lincoln,
right?
I mean, which is how the series of books that this came from, which is the same people who did Sensibility and Sea Monsters and Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies.
Is it the same author?
No, it's not. At least I don't believe so. But they all have the theme that they're all based on another work, and this is indeed based on. I think I can't remember maybe
Abraham
Gore
Lincoln?
Vidal's Lincoln biography. I'm not even sure, but it is based in part on a pre-existing
Really?
biography, apparently.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they took pretty closely from big sections of life. When you read the book, there's whole excerpts from his writings and everything, and they just found room in the real story to put in this other story. And the movie, much more so, is into the other story than it is to Lincoln's biography. The book sticks a little closer to his real life story, but you know what? Who cares ultimately?
But wait a minute.
It's fun seeing that stuff, how it ties in, like, you know, about like the stuff with his family and like, you know, of course, how we all know how he dies and everything.
Wait a minute, you telling me this isn't a true story? This didn't happen?
Hey, I'm telling you it's a true story. It happened. You just saw it on the screen.
Much more excited. Yeah.
At the same time, the biggest weakness this thing has is in the script, because there's so many just little holes, and like they tell you one thing and then they show you something else right after. You're like, guys, seriously.
Yeah, I have. Well, the movie has a lot going for it in the sense that we already said it's visual. This director is very visual. And here's the other thing, though. It's Abraham Lincoln. They're pretty much retelling he's Batman. You know, they're pretty much retelling the story of Batman. It's a guy who lost his parents. He's pissed and he wants to fight the person responsible and everybody else that's linked up with him. I mean,
a mysterious stranger trains him.
Yeah, and a mysterious, and that's see, that's the other thing about this movie is
Ends
that
up being tied into the very evil in which he's fighting. Yeah, right. It's fucking Batman.
It's fucking Batman.
Liam Neeson.
Yeah,
Except
Abraham,
this is man who fights bats.
yeah, well, either way it goes, he's badass. But you know, no, but
Badass.
yeah, I learned it from listening to you. But that's the other thing about this movie. Yeah, see, a guy comes in to train him, and that character is played by Dominic Cooper. This movie is full of actors who took the role because they were probably the ones who didn't laugh at the script when they got it. But the people who are in it, it's not just this guy Benjamin Walker that carries the movie. There's a lot of people in this movie who they're playing a straight face too.
Straight. Oh, especially
Got your
the
boy
guy,
Anthony Mackie?
especially the girl playing his wife.
Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
Yeah, who I thought she was great.
Yeah, she was in Scott Pilgrim. A lot of people know her from. But you have people like Anthony Mackie. You know, you got who was friends with Abraham Lincoln when he was a kid, and he's pretty much his Black Robin in this movie.
I'll say this: I actually wasn't impressed with the acting as you guys were. I mean, I thought everybody played it straight faced, which is how they should have done it. Totally, like nobody broke character. But it was hard to say the dialogue. The dialogue wasn't very good, generally speaking, because the whole thing is played for laughs as a complete straight man. Like, I mean, there's nobody to play off the straight man. That's the joke in and of itself.
That's what I was.
But I never went, yeah, these guys are really good at this. In fact, I thought Mary Elizabeth Winstead in particular looked like she was like, what am I doing here?
See, that's the thing,
time,
man.
you know?
That's why I'm saying that the actors worked, because a lot of the dialogue is horrible. I'm not going to even say bad. It's horrible. Rufus Sewell is the villain in here, and his dialogue is typical villain dialogue. Well, he's
played villains so much they probably didn't even write dialogue for him.
You probably just came on speaking.
You know this role. Just say what comes to mind.
Well, that's what they like.
I mean, Ray Fiennes didn't return our calls, so you know what to do.
But that's what they do. I mean, they give him lines like he said, "I'd like to meet this Abraham Lincoln," and he's also doing this really bad accent too. And then his sidekick, this woman, she's like, "Well, how do you expect he's gonna? What makes you think he's gonna accept your invitation?" "Oh, we'll give him something that he can't refuse," or some shit like that. But the movie even opens up terribly, because and I thought it had a great beginning, but the very beginning of the movie, they show Abraham Lincoln as a young boy already fighting slavery. He's like, "Hey, what you with my best black friend over there?" Because they had these slave owners who are like taking this black family and splitting them apart, and people are saying, "No, young Abraham Lincoln, just sit back. It's not our fight."
Look away.
But he's going up there with it, and they're whooping. I mean, they're whooping that little black boy.
Anthony Mackie.
Yeah, they whooping his ass so hard. They're doing it in slow motion. Just and we got to get white people in this movie somehow.
Can we admit that at least that whipping scene was probably the coolest looking 3D in the movie? Where everyone, I felt like I got my fucking ass whooped right in the face when you see the end of that go. Whoosh,
I know. Yeah, I went out to the lobby and started trying to find cotton to pick. I felt like I was getting my ass whooped. But while this kid is getting his ass beat, Abraham Lincoln's mother's over there, and this is where anybody else who'd been in the situation would have been like, either don't do this or stop, don't do that. But she has to get up and deliver like a very minute, short segment of a speech. Either way it go, it was corny, and it was like, okay,
but it became the theme of the movie.
It was an obvious theme.
Which is why I forgive it, because I will say, all I could think about walking out when I was rolling out of the movie was, wow, this really does take me back to the days of like those B movies where the premise is ridiculous, but they at least told the cast, hey, play this like straight, play this serious. I mean, sure, it's a ridiculous premise, but don't play up to the fact that it's just ridiculous. I always get upset where, movies like a lot of Robert Rodriguez movies where, it's like the actors are all in on it. And you can tell.
They're winking at the camera.
They're winking at the camera.
Yeah, and it's
giving thumbs up.
Cop out. It's a trap door. And anybody goes like, that was dumb. It's like, I know, right?
But there was something you said, as much as I like the analogy to Batman that they're making in this movie, and yes, they are, but they gloss over that training sequence. When Dominic Cooper comes in and wants to train him, it's one of those things where they just rush through it. Yeah. I mean, it's almost like we joked about this before. It's almost like a timeshare sale because he comes in and he says, do you want to be a vampire hunter? Are you ready to not have any friends, any relationships? He doesn't say, well, just go home and think about it. Right. He's like, you got to do this now. And then they cut right into the montage. And then they do really silly things in the montage, like you said, Cyrus, where they show Abraham Lincoln chopping down a tree with one blow, something Batman did, by the way. But they explain it in the flimsiest of ways in this movie.
It doesn't even make sense.
It doesn't even make sense.
You're like, you see, it's not mad anger that makes you have that ability. It's truth. And that is never explained or has anything to do with anything.
It's the truth about how pissed off you are.
It's about as quick but not as interesting as like a story of Ricky training scene moment where, they're just trying to get through it just to get to the meat because it's like, well, this isn't the whole story.
See, that's what I felt like. I thought like they rushed through it. And you're right. It's like, he's like telling them, it's not hate that gives you your strength, it's the truth. And I'm like, no, that's George Washington's power right there.
Right. The only thing it seems to tie into
he's Honest Abe.
Honest Abe. That seems like the only reason that's there is so like, oh, well, now we've explained his nickname.
Okay, see, that's flimsy
and you're
too.
like, but that never really is anything. He lies through the entire fucking movie. That's true.
Yeah, he does. Another thing that you mentioned, man, there's so many things in this movie that just doesn't follow its own rules that is laid out. They don't explain why vampires can walk in daylight.
In fact, they start to say that, like, they have issues. Like, there's a hint that they need sunscreen or something like that. But then clearly they don't.
They don't follow through with it. The other thing is, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. The weakness for the vampires in this movie is silver. I always thought that was werewolves.
It's more of a werewolf
thing. I've seen things where they've made that with vampires.
Well, I mean, they do.
Matter of fact, on True Blood, that's something. Like,
the point is they bother to explain it, and that's why it doesn't bother me. They go, okay, here's why silver bothers vampires. I'm like, all right, fine. As long as you told me why, I don't have a problem with it.
No, man, I'm true werewolf. I ain't buying that shit.
They just not only did do it on True Blood, but on one of the main vampires fought in the Civil War.
You can't do this. You can't mix that. Let me tell you something. You excusing vampires for that, but what if we went and started stabbing werewolves in the heart with stakes and killing them that way?
You get some pissed off werewolves is what you're going to get.
Exactly. He'll whoop your ass. It's a double standard out there, and I don't like it. That's all I'm saying.
Actually, silver has been regularly used in fiction for any number of supernatural creatures as their bane. I don't know why.
I don't accept it.
Come on, man.
I'm real. Okay.
So everybody else is on this train except you.
Because I'm real. I'm keeping it real. All right, shit. I ain't moving on this.
I'm keeping this uneducated.
Yeah. Keeping it real dumb. You just can't come in and casually start mixing mythologies like that.
Don't confuse me with the facts.
Yeah, call yourself some true horror fan.
But stuff like there is stuff though that is like inconsistent. Like the whole okay, so they're telling us. Like, if a vampire bites somebody and they die that way, they don't turn into a vampire. We see that several times. And yet, in a flashback sequence, we see that it does, in fact, work that way. Which the fuck is it?
So,
for all you know, there's a certain little twist move you got to do to turn somebody to a vampire.
There you go.
It depends on the time of day.
The time of day. You got to suck on the neck and give them
there you go with that excusing and shit. You can't do that. So you that.
Are we reviewing Prometheus again?
Yeah, I'm not genuinely excusing it.
Brother, let me tell you something.
I agree with
Corey, the book is out there. You just need to read it.
I'm not gonna do it. See, you that kind of nigga that brings your little badass kid into a room, and when he's tearing up shit, you be like, oh well, he has a short attention span. He's really a good kid. He's all right. No, I don't. That guy explain that shit. That shit right there, like where some people die when they get bit by a vampire. Some people turn when they get vampire.
Like instantly.
Yeah. And there's some people when it's convenient for the plot of this movie for some people to not do that. then they do it, and that's what it feels like. The movie's really not all that consistent.
No,
with
I had a problem with that. That was kind of a big problem for me. But I'm like, well, I'm watching a movie with
you know
Abraham
what?
Lincoln. Fucking
I know.
What'd you say?
I'm watching it. I have that problem, but once again, I'm reminded I'm watching Abraham Lincoln
Throwing horses is fine.
Yeah, jumping
But if you
across
can't-
horses and shit.
You can't be consistent with your vampire bites.
I mean, but
I'm
no,
out of here.
Yeah, but the thing is, I would never argue. I would never ever argue with anyone about that. I was like, no, you're right, but
It's
I don't give a shit. Whatever.
It's a shame that that's as lazy as it is because it would not have been hard to fix. The problems that are there are like, wow, you could have explained all this stuff away so easily. You just didn't fucking bother.
To sum it up for me, really the movie, for all its inconsistencies and in some places lazy writing and terrible, terrible dialogue, I thought it had a great first half because, yeah, it's silly. You can excuse a lot of that silliness that goes along with it, including the dialogue, and watch it as this cool ass action film. But in the second part of the movie, it becomes routine action. And that's where the cracks of this ridiculousness really starts to show. And when it's not looking ridiculous, it just feels like, all right, well, it's not as inspired as the first half. And there are also some points where they try to work in the real history of Lincoln where it seems, man, they've done a great job at that. When Lincoln's like, hey, because they ask him, they say, why are you running for president? You got to be secret. It's like, no, baby, don't you know if I'm president, I can do anything? I got access to shit that no vampire hunter got.
Win-win.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it's not working all that well. But the parts that I did enjoy won me over more than the parts that didn't. So I'm going to give this a matinee, even though it's an extremely low matinee.
Oh, okay. It delivered so much better than I expected. I mean, I was dreading it going into it. And I was like, wow, they took the silly premise and just said, fuck it. There's no reason to be on that level. Let's step up our game. If anything, there's times where it felt like it could have been a better movie than it had any right to be. And then you wish like, oh, I wish it could have been even better. But it's like, you know what? I feel like it started something at something low and they pushed it up high. And it's very entertaining. And I give it an enthusiastic matinee.
Yeah, I'm right there kind of between both of you two, because I agree with pretty much everything you both said, except that I will say I felt like all the way through it would win me, it would lose me, it would win me, it would lose me. But it did it so regularly that after a while I was just like, you know what, this is all right. I'm being too hard on this. I mean, there are parts that it lags. I'm like, all right, we'll give it another 2 minutes and something badass is going to happen. And every time it did. I'm going to give this a right down the middle matinee.
A lukewarm matinee.
Right in the
No, he
middle.
didn't say lukewarm.
Right in the
He
middle.
said right in
You're
the
the
middle.
lukewarm.
Yeah, you're lukewarm.
Oh, yeah. I'm just simmering.
Okay. You're starting to bubble a little bit. All right.
You know, all I can say is thank God somebody's making history interesting for me. So,
Only they had taught history
yeah,
this
that's
way.
great. You know, he fought vampires too. What the shit? Okay, I'm in. And you know, this it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was one of those movies where I was a little worried because whenever Hollywood tries to, you know, juggle around with this type of material, it turns into a big mess and it turns into, you know, the movie version of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I did love there was some just genuinely just gorgeous action moments in this movie that, I mean, especially in 3D, which I have to admit, the 3D really worked for this film.
You know, they did something interesting in 3D that nobody does, where it wasn't like a big come at you effect, but the effect on the vampire's eyes, the way they kind of stood out.
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
That's something.
Yeah, that was a neat effect.
Yeah, I thought there was something wrong with my glasses, but I realized, this is an effect.
Yeah, I'd be
That
curious
worked.
to watch this without 3D to see what that looks like, because it felt like they were utilizing the 3D to create that effect, but it was like mesmerizing.
And you have to give the movie credit for that. I mean, it was just, you know, it was just visually striking at moments. There's actually a beautiful animated sequence.
Oh, that's
where
right.
I kind of wish they would have done that a whole lot more, because that really got the feel of what you were watching, the whole fun aspect of, you know, the genre moving into, you know, crossing with history, you know, where they made like these paintings like coming to life and you're just like, wow. But, you know, yeah, the movie has its problems. A movie like this is going to have its problems, you know. But I just like the fact that the actors were committed to really, like, you know, playing their characters, being committed to the roles and the idea of it, even though it's preposterous. But, you know, that's what makes movies like this really fun to me, you know. So it's a matinee for me, all right? It's just a matinee. When I go to the movie, I'm paying matinee price because I'm not going to get cheated with that, you know. If you're looking for something else, I don't know what the fuck you're looking for if you go to a Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter movie. But
You're looking for vampires in Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
Whooping ass.
It's going to be the movie this year that people are going to get, one of the movies people are going to get the most mad at us for liking as much
Right.
as we do
Yeah.
certain people, because they're going to come into it and they're going to go, wow, the Spooky said it was great, and they're going to walk in expecting it to be the Avengers, and this ain't that kind of movie.
We didn't say it was the Avengers.
This is a B movie with a lot of money thrown at it that manages to do that right.
Cyrus, you know what I say? Fuck them.
Yeah, exactly. I wish somebody would, the first person who comes on here and comments that they're upset because they thought that we said that this is as great as the Avengers. I'm dressing up like Abraham Lincoln and coming after their ass.
Abraham Lincoln, troll hunter.
I'll dress up like Abraham Lincoln.
Troll hunter, yeah.
I'll dress up like Abraham Lincoln. I know how I'm going to do that, but I'll do it. I'll slap you with my dick. All right? That's what I'll do.
And fuck, there's going to be a lot of dumb people after this movie anyway, because you know they're going to teach this shit in school. They're going to be, because
But they'll come
I
at point
pray
where
to
they're like,
God.
man, we
Yeah.
cannot keep these kids awake.
Yeah.
when
All
we
I-
teach Lincoln. But if we pull out the book with the vampires,
well, that's what they're going to say. It's going to be like, fuck it, so what? If they just halfway learning history.
Yeah. All I thought about watching this entire movie was like, there's going to be that one fucking asshole kid when he has to write that paper about Abraham Lincoln. You know, oh shit, there's some vampire shit in here. Oh,
You know, I hardly wait till like 100 years from now when they make Barack Obama a zombie hunter or something, where he's like killing all the people who are trying to eat the homosexuals.
Well, their partners do that well enough.
Shall have a new birth of freedom. And the government of the people, by the people, for the people. Shall not perish from the earth, from the earth, from the earth.